Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the BOCC. If you want to join me, we'll do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since we were off yesterday for Memorial Day, I thought I would, I found this video from 1983. It's a Ronald Reagan speech on Memorial Day, and he says it much better than I do. So if you want to bear with us for 5 minutes, we'll watch this.
In America's cities and towns today, flags will be placed on graves and cemeteries. Public officials will speak of the sacrifice and the valor of those whose memory we honor. I have no illusions about what little I can add now to the silent testimony of those who gave their lives willingly for their country. Words are even more feeble on this Memorial Day, for the sight before us is that of a strong and good nation that stands in silence and remembers those who were loved and who in return loved their countrymen enough to die for them. Yet we must try to honor them, not for their sakes alone, but for our own. And if words cannot repay the debt we owe these men, surely with our actions we must strive to keep faith with them and with a vision that led them to battle and a final sacrifice. Our first obligation to them and ourselves is plain enough. The United States and the freedom for which it stands, the freedom for which they died, must endure and prosper. Their lives remind us that freedom is not bought cheaply. It has a cost. It imposes a burden. And just as they whom we commemorate were willing to sacrifice, so too must we, in a less final, less heroic way, be willing to give of ourselves. Each died for a cause he considered more important than his own life. Well, they didn't volunteer to die. They volunteered to defend values for which men have always been willing to die if need be, the values which make up what we call civilization. And how they must have wished, in all the ugliness that war brings, that no other generation of young men to follow would have to undergo that same experience. As we honor their memory today, let us pledge that their lives, their sacrifices, their valor shall be justified and remembered for as long as God gives life to this nation. And let us also pledge to do our utmost to carry out what must have been their wish, that no other generation of young men will ever have to share their experiences and repeat their sacrifice. Earlier today, with the music that we have heard and that of our national anthem, I can't claim to know the words of all the national anthems in the world, but I don't know of any other that ends with a question and a challenge as ours does. Does that flag still wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? That is what we must resolve to do. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us do that. He says it much more eloquently than I could ever express it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great way to start the week.
Okay. Commissioner Mortensen, if you'd give us a review of the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you here, and I'm glad to have heard that again. I move to approve the minutes of the activities of the last, well, May 20th through the 22nd.
Okay, we have a motion to approve on the minutes. Questions, corrections? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll run down consent agenda pretty short today. Under agreements, we have a completion letter to Midway Underground for the Willamette Road Slide Repair Project. Total cost of that project was $390,419.02. And we have a resolution in a matter of setting a public hearing for July 30th, 2024 at 9:30 to identify project that may be eligible for Title III funding. These are federal forest payments. We get, last year, I think we got about 18,000. We're expecting a little bit about around that. They typically, the fire departments are who put in project bids for them. So we'll see that. And we're going through the process to do that. And miscellaneous isn't part of consent agenda, is it?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any questions, comments?
I did want to point out that the Willamette Road Slide Repair Project restores an alternative route for Ocean Beach Highway. There was some slide problems that made that a particularly precarious alternate route when a bigger slide shuts down Highway 4. So it's important to get that one rebuilt. And the federal funding that we're talking about is a program that counties have been advocating for years to try to recognize that there are services that have to be provided by county governments on federal lands for which we get no property tax. And this is a little tiny contribution in lieu of not paying property taxes from the federal government. And typically they go to projects that either help educate the public on protecting themselves from wildfires. There's construction and how landscaping strategies and techniques that they can use, or they assist in search and rescue operations on federal lands that often go through the rural fire departments. So both of these continue important programs by the county.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we have one miscellaneous item. I got to tease my colleague because you see he's dressed up. It's not a parole hearing. I just be upfront about that. It's not a parole hearing. He's got. I think you're meeting with government people today. Yeah.
Folks from Washington, D.C.
Yeah. One miscellaneous item. I don't know if this was consideration and approval of preliminary grant and terms required to secure additional security funding through the Washington Administrative Office of the Courts. This is I think most of you know, we've talked about it. We're doing some security upgrades over at the Hall of Justice with cameras and different things. And Judge Basher secured a grant for that initially. And I think this is just an additional grant. Maybe I can have you just clarify that for us.
Thank you, Commissioners. Me on here, terrific. Thank you, Commissioners. Yes, this is essentially the same grant program that we accessed last year. I think we had 118 or 119,000 last year. We're making a request this year for 41,000, which it represents 60% of the total amount that we're proposing of 69,600. The way these grants work is the county has a 40% match when we do this. We wanted to give you guys a heads up that we've got some additional security that we couldn't fund under the current
Yeah.
project we're doing. If you go to page 6 of the materials we submitted, that kind of lists out some of the details of what we're looking for. And what we really wanted to do at this point was to give you guys a heads up that if we do this, we'll be back this fall requesting an amendment for 2025. We're not asking for approval of this other
Okay.
than we want to give you heads up that we're looking at that. So, and make sure we
Just want to make sure it got on the record.
yep,
Perfect.
give you a heads up on it. Make sure you don't have any opposition to us pursuing that.
I don't believe there is. There's a lot of security issues we need to address over there and any help we can get.
Sounds good. And actually, these heads ups are appreciated, of course.
Okay. Any questions, or if not, we'll proceed ahead. This is kind of short notice as we have to have this submitted by the 31st this Friday. So we wanted to make sure we at least we're over here to get a thumbs up or down before we proceeded. So
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah.
So
Where's your thumb? You want the thumbs up?
That's two. All right.
Your Honor,
Okay.
we've been working on a lot of upgrades over at the Hall of Justice in a lot of different facilities. One additional ongoing discussion that we've had with the Superior Court has been some changes at the Callus Youth Services Center. This doesn't have anything to do with that.
No.
More information to come on recommendations coming down the road for.
Separate issue there. This is purely, and it's listed out what we're proposing for upgrades. These are additional cameras, some secured doors, some security for the sheriff's evidence room. I believe that's what a piece of it is. So it's just things we couldn't fund in the current grant.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
so if you have no questions, we'll get out of your hair.
Thank you,
Right.
Judge.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Your Honor, under this miscellaneous section, I wanted to bring up an item for discussion that was kind of a follow-up or a consequence of the Board of Health meeting last month, in which it turns out that we were, as you put it, put in timeout
Put in timeout.
by YouTube, which we depend upon for live coverage of our proceedings, and they canceled us because of content during the discussion that day. We heard a very eloquent talk from former President Reagan about the values of democracy, and one value that what I feel was tremendously violated is this concept of free speech and the marketplace of ideas. Although every once in a while we'll have rowdy crowds here that kind of express displeasure at people who have differing viewpoints, to have a major corporation decide what is fit to go out to the public on a public discussion is absolutely un-American. And I would like to propose that we reprimand YouTube and demand an apology to Callus County for interfering with the free exchange of ideas. And if they don't, we cancel them. We didn't always have YouTube, so I don't feel obligated to be a part of such an autocratic and anti-American activity as YouTube's censorship of government public discussions. That was wrong.
You realize you're going to get us put in timeout again.
Then we don't need it.
I'm teasing.
Then we
I'm-
don't
I'm
need 'em.
teasing. I totally agree with you. I don't have any problem with that. I think we are looking at options besides YouTube, because yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's no room for that type of stuff when you got an open forum and they're having a discussion. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Couple of updates that we have Board of Health at 10, a couple updates, then I'll open it up to the floor. Last week, I spoke, we had some time and we talked about the meeting I was at with Legislative Steering Committee for, I hate using acronyms, Washington State Association of Counties, not credit unions, counties. And they talked about a committee that, and the way it was put to me, that basically reports to the governor, a committee called EFSEC, EFSEC. And how some of the rural counties are having problems because they come in with, I gave the example of Spokane County. They were, EFSEC recommended or approved a wind farm over there without, they don't have to follow county guidelines. They don't have to, they can spin the rules if it's green energy and put these things in. And so there's been, Yakima expressed some concern, Spokane, other places on the east, is that they don't have to abide by county code or even work with the county if they don't want to. And I got an email that said, this is that, basically said FSEC's been around since it was formed by the legislature in 1970. And they do have to talk to the counties. It told me they're not tyrannical. I don't think I called them that. I think I probably intimated that they were. But all I can report to you is what the counties are telling me how they operate. And a lot of things start, as most things, it starts with good intentions. In the 70s, Department of Energy started because we were too dependent on foreign oil. Well, now it's 2024 and we're in the same spot. Department of Education was formed in the 70s to keep us at the top of the rank in education. And you've all seen how that's done. So these things can start with good intentions, but over time they morph into something that they were never intended to be. So I think that's the point on this FSEC, is the counties are feeling like it's more into something it was never intended to be and has more power. So Justin,
So
Since I learned
what's
more.
what's that acronym stand for?
yeah, I don't know. FSEC, I didn't, it's environmental something.
And actually, Energy Facility Siting Committee or
Yeah.
Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have the power to just to, according to I've never dealt with them. I don't think we've ever dealt with them personally. I don't think we've had something come into our county, but I can tell you some Eastern Washington counties and citizens are not happy because they're putting these things in their backyard with no input.
Yeah,
And-
originally it was to monitor the siting of nuclear power plants in Washington.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into
So
other.
you can see how things
Yeah.
morph. That's one of the reasons I'm very hesitant on any new government program.
So, excuse me. It's early morning, I guess, somewhere in Hawaii, maybe. What I want to bring up is that I often take opportunity to point out to the public how some of the government games are actually played. A classic example was when the WIRA 25 and 26 met in 2010 or 12 in response to the 2006 proposal or the Department of Ecology, which hamstrung the county. Part of those discussions were a desire to put meters on private exempt wells. And one of the arguments that was put forth at the time was, don't worry your pretty little head about this, because you see, we don't have the manpower to enforce that. So don't worry about it. We'll pass it and then we'll worry about it in the future. And this is an example. This FSEC has been here since
1970.
70, and all of a sudden it starts to arise now. The public should really be aware that you should not allow any regulations that do not have a thoughtful understanding of the implications today and for tomorrow, because this is a game that's played. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
The whole idea that state agencies don't have to follow or recognize local land use issues also came about when with the legalization of marijuana, and the state issues licenses to people to have production facilities and marketing facilities and retail facilities. And people assumed, because they got the state license, that they can build anywhere. And it has been a headache because they don't follow the rules that all the other businessmen have to follow. And they get by with cheaper construction, and they ignore an awful lot of the rules and regulations that are designed at the local level to protect people. And again, it came from the state, and they say it's not our job to enforce that, and they won't even they won't turn somebody down because they're violating local land use ordinances, and that's just wrong. It's backwards.
I agree with that. In a sort of semi follow-up, those businesses are victimized, if you will, by the banks. They typically have not allowed credit cards to be used and various things of that nature, and it smacks of a little too much interference in my book. So it's not a balanced approach on either side.
Yeah. One other update from my end, I had a call from Daily News last week. I think they did an article on opioid settlements, and I got email, so I thought I'd just bring everybody up to date on the newest stuff on that. Just a little history. We have a settlement from whatever the first one is, Johnson & Johnson, that pays out over a period of years, 15, 17 years. Over that period of years, Cowlitz County will receive $3,501,467 and some cents. To date, we've received $729,617.78 of that settlement, and we get something every year. In addition, there was another settlement that looks like it's going to be paid out and it's a lump sum settlement of 61.67 million available in one-time payment. And we signed a deal, and we'll be receiving payment on that. And I don't know what that one lump sum is going to be. It's probably along the same percentage as the other, but I don't know that for a fact. And then additionally, there's a new opioid settlement with Kroger that I'm sure our finance person will fill out the paperwork for that. And I don't know what the Kroger settlement, the projected amount for Washington is 47.5 million, payable over 11 years. So we'll see what that amounts to. So we have some of these coming in, and the question from, I think, the Daily News is, have we started using some of those? And I think, I don't know the answer to that. I think Human and Health Services is still looking at, because it's like 7 pages of what you can use it for, and still kind of getting their hands around that thing. But that's just a little update, because I know an article came out, and then we received an email from state of Washington that there's another one, Kroger, that'll be coming too. So other than that, I'm out next week, so you're stuck with my colleagues. I'm gonna be in Idaho playing. And with that, unless you have anything else.
Are you sure you don't wish to zoom in?
You know, I don't know that I get Zoom where I'm at.
On the motorcycle?
That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Okay, we have some time. We have Board of Health that starts at 10. I think we have a presentation on that today, but if you have comments or something, we're open.
Good morning, Dennis. It's nice to see you all dressed up.
That's as shocking as if I all of a sudden showed up in a suit. So,
No, that would really. be
yeah,
shocking,
yeah. Well, I'm down. I only have pajamas and these clothes now, so you get that choice. Rick, I want to compliment you on that Reagan video this morning. That was very appropriate. And the good news is all of us in this audience are old enough to understand what we looked at. My challenge to you would be to get that into all the schools where the people have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
That was some pretty interesting footage from World War I, because movies weren't all that common back in those days.
Anything else? Okay. We will adjourn this meeting. Remember, Board of Health will fire up at 10 o'clock. Thank you.